In this video, I'm going to talk about overcoming self-doubt by the compound effect. So I'm going to talk about how the compound effect can help eliminate self-doubt from your life. If you've ever quit during a long-term effort, things related to health or business, habits, and skills, this may be one of the reasons why. So the plan for this video, first I'm going to talk about proof that little things matter. And then I'm going to talk about the compound effect, breaking down what it is exactly. And finally, I'm going to talk about how it all ties together to overcome self-doubt. Little things matter. Let's imagine you work a lot on the computer and you have a login screen with a password. And it takes 3 seconds to type in your password, but you do it 4 or 5 times a day. That means 12 to 15 seconds a day. If you eliminated that by not having a password, what would that look like? So over a 40-hour work week, it would take 48 minutes. Over a 60-hour work week, 60 minutes, depending on how much you work in the day. But how much would that add up to for the rest of your working life? Assuming something around 30 to 40 years of working time left, it'll add up to 24 to 48 hours. But this is just an example. We waste a lot more than 15 seconds every day, and it's not about the 15 seconds. It's about the accumulation of what 15 seconds every day for the rest of your life brings to. So it's not about the 3 seconds, but it's about that cumulated effect of a particular behavior. And that's why the compound effect comes into play. The login example was kind of an extreme to demonstrate that even the smallest thing can have a big long-term impact. Now, how much time are you wasting per day due to things like perfectionism, procrastination, distractions, interruptions, overwhelm, lack of direction, lack of clarity, exhaustion, or self-doubt? Now, if you could save between 15 seconds and 30 minutes per day, what would that look like? If you save 20 minutes per day, you'll be saving 160 hours per year, meaning 4 times 40-hour work weeks, pretty much an entire month of holiday from saving just 20 minutes a day. And that's per year. Over a lifetime, you would multiply that by however many years you have left to work. So imagine 10 years, 20 years, what would an extra 10 to 30 months of holidays from thin air just by improving productivity skills and not wasting 20 hours, 20 minutes per day? So we're talking about the scale of years that can be saved. That's my point. Little things matter. So with that in mind, I'm going to now talk about the compound effect. So what exactly is the compound effect? The compound effect is the accumulated behavior, the accumulated effect of a particular behavior compounded over a long time. Now, it's a little bit hard to picture in behavior and self-development. So to illustrate what compounding is, it's easiest to think of a financial example because it's a lot more tangible. Interest rates. If you have $100 in a bank account that gives a 5% interest every year, then in the first year, you're going to get 5%, $105. The extra amount that you get in the bank is $5 that year. But in year 2, you start with a bigger amount. And that's the whole point. When you start with a bigger amount, the same percentage of improvement yields a bigger result. In this case, year 2, you add an extra $5.25. So that's the main idea. The extra returns grow each year because the initial amount is bigger, which means that over a long time, the growth is exponential. So we've talked about what the compounding effect is, but now how do we tie this all together, and how does it help overcome self-doubt? That's exactly what I'm going to be talking about in this section. So we know what the compound effect is, and we have proof that small things matter over a long time. The big question is, how does this all tie together with overcoming self-doubt? The core of self-doubt comes from a lack of competence, skill, or lack of practice. The path or the plan to the desired result is unclear, or the path to the result that's desired is overly complex. So what's the solution? Both number 1 and number 2 are related to the compound effect. And I'll get into that very shortly. But first, I want to demystify number 3. Number 3 is basically, when you think about it, just a longer and less obvious or harder to see mix of number 1 and 2. No matter how complex a skill development is, it's just a mix of a bunch of skills that are basically 1 and 2 combined. If you were the best at something in the world, would you have any self-doubt? No, right? So we're going to tackle it from that angle. Here's why. Number 3, I'll show you how it's not an issue, because it's actually just a combination of 1 and 2 that takes a little bit longer. And I'll do that by showing 3 examples. One that's business, productivity related, one that's health related, and one that's relationships related. So the first is business. There's a lot of sub-skills to business that we don't necessarily think about, especially when you're not in the business of one of these sub-skills. One thing is marketing, message, content, where to put your message, finding your ideal client, learning copywriting. Then there's sales. The style of selling has to resonate with you, the skills of selling, getting sales calls, building relationships, closing sales calls. Then there's the product itself, the delivery, the results, the tracking. My point is, when people doubt themselves, and a lot of entrepreneurs never push through to the point where they start getting exponential results, it's because they lack in skills in a bunch of areas that may not have been identified. A similar thing happens for getting healthier. A lot of sub-skills we don't think about. Diet, what to eat, how much to eat, when to eat, how much to drink, what not to for all of those. Exercise, what exercise do you like, how long, how intensely, how often, when in the day. Lifestyle, is it going to fit my schedule? Am I going to stay motivated? How do I stay motivated? How can I be consistent? All of those things, by progressing through in the compound effect, can be resolved. Final example, finding love or relationships in general. The sub-skills, knowing yourself, your core values, what you like, what you don't like, what do you tolerate or not. Relating skills, communication, listening, understanding, empathy, consent, negotiation, boundaries, dating or people skills, humor, touch, nonverbal skills, charisma, boldness, confidence, all of those things. Confidence comes by eliminating self-doubt and by having higher skills. So how does this all play together? It's not your fault if you have self-doubt about a particular thing, because we're often overwhelmed by the complexity of it. And that complexity breaks down into simplicity once you pull it apart and break it down into lots of different little factors and skills. Some of them you've already got in place. Some of them might need some work. Some of them might need more work than others. So when each separate skill is a piece of the puzzle, you then know what is the one that you want to focus on, or which ones will yield the most amount of results. So hence, how do we eliminate number 3? Well, number 1, with more skill, we get less self-doubt. So by breaking down a complex path into lots of little simple skills, we can identify which ones we want to work on, when and how. And number 2, the path clarity is sorted. It can either be you grow in each skill individually, or you can tackle multiple skills in parallel, but the caveat to that is the more you take on, the less you can progress in any one particular thing at a time. So it highly depends on what your time availability looks like, what your ambition looks like, and the mix of skills, whether they synchronize with each other. For example, marketing and sales are a lot more in sync than nutrition and relationships. So that's one thing to keep in mind. So now that we have eliminated number 3, back to this slide, we've taken number 3 out because we can break down complexity into simplicity. And simplicity is just getting competence in the skills and planning which skills you need to get competence in. And you have the solution to self-doubt. A quick exercise before we move on, because this is going to really help cement the belief piece. Now, you don't necessarily need a pen and paper. You can do, or you can just think about this one in your head. But pause the video if you need to get that. I'll just dig in. Easy questions first. Which one is greater, $10 or $1,000? No brainer. 2.74 or $1.58? Also a no-brainer. 17.32 billion or 900.2 million? No-brainer. We know, we don't even, by the time I said the numbers, you had already made the decision. You already know what the answer is to which one is greater. But here's where it gets hard. Which one is greater? $5 million in 1 year, or $1, but compounded every week by 1%. So for 52 weeks, $1 compounded on itself. And the answer will be revealed. And also, the reason why this is so complicated for our brains to process will be revealed. Obvious, not obvious, right? As in, it doesn't take you half a second to answer the hard question. And there's a good reason for that. Our brains didn't evolve to solve this problem. Our brains evolved thinking maximum 6 months into the future. It's summer now, it's gonna be winter in 6 months. What do I need to prepare to survive? They didn't have to think about retirement, mortgages, putting kids through school, the economy collapsing. These are modern problems that your ancient brain is not capable of dealing with. So we need a lot of faith. We need belief in order to have faith to take the actions that we need to do in order to get the long-term results. So graphically, this same problem, we know that at some point, the $1 at 1% per week is going to exceed the 5 million. But the question is when. Our brains evolved thinking in this way, linearly, not exponentially. Linear thinking brain thinks if I work for 1 hour, I get 1 result. If I work for 2 hours, I get 2 results. If I work for 5 hours, I get 5 results. But exponential brain can't put that way into the future because we just can't calculate it. Here's the answer. The lines cross for this particular problem, this exact example, the hard question that I said, at the 60th week. So those of you that picked $1 compounded at 1% every week for 52 weeks, you would have been here, right there. You would have been missing out on millions of dollars. 5 million was the correct answer for 1 year. But 10 weeks later, you would have been absolutely correct because you would have been millions more rich. So that's the reason that this problem is so hard. We can't foresee this effect, especially further out into the future. So my point here, back to overcoming self-doubt. We know what the compound effect is. We have proof that small things matter. Now, how do we tie it together to overcome self-doubt? Self-doubt comes from a mix of a lack of skills, lack of practice, lack of belief, unclear path. And all of these things are addressed by the compound effect and persistence, which leads to having consistency and habits. And again, if you were the best in the world, would you have any self-doubt? No. So belief comes first. Belief allows us to take the action required to power through that struggle period before it becomes exponential, before we see the results. Action leads to competence. Competence and skills bring us closer to the exponential part of the compound effect. And then finally, competence leads to eliminating self-doubt. Again, if your goal is to be the best in the world, there will be no self-doubt. So that's basically the plan for eliminating self-doubt on a high level by looking at the compound effect. So we've been through proof that little things matter. We talked about the compound effect, and we talked about overcoming self-doubt. So I just want to give a quick summary, as usual. Little things matter because when you save 20 minutes per day, you'll be saving 160 hours per year, which is a whole month of vacation. And when you compound that exponentially for your whole life, we're talking about saving years or getting years back of free time out of thin air. The compound effect, we talked about how that was little actions accumulating over a long time that lead to huge results. And then overcoming self-doubt by first understanding the mathematics of the compound effect, understanding why our brains cannot process the math of self-doubt because we weren't wired to. Those are new problems that we have to face. And number three, having the belief that this path is going to lead to the desired results is the fuel that's going to let you take action, which is going to lead to results and competence, and finally, overcoming the self-doubt. That's it for this video. If you enjoyed it or found it useful, make sure to hit the like or subscribe button below. You can also connect with me personally on Facebook or LinkedIn, and you can find more about flow states, personal development, and the compound effect in my free Facebook group. The link is there. It's also in my cover photo on Facebook. Feel free to book a call with me. I love meeting new people. I promise it'll be a no sales chat. I'm not here to take your credit card without knowing you first. Thank you again for your time, energy, and attention. I wish you all the best.